So this video is going to be us looking together at some of the images that I reference in the book and ask you to go look at on your own. We're going to look at them together for a couple of minutes. So the first one is the forgetting curve. This one is a little amusing to me because, of course, we know that we forget. But holy smokes, when you look at it on the, in this very simple graph, it kind of really brings the visual home. So I do suggest that you show this to your students so they really understand that when they hear a material or read material, that only experience it one time and don't interact with it in any way, they will forget half of it, like almost immediately. Let me show you this slide as well. Oops. This one actually breaks it down into the hours. So we remember 100% immediately, but in 20 minutes, we've lost 40%. And by 9 hours, we're down to under 40. I think it's kind of fascinating that then we stay in that range, you know, for the rest of the month, but this one I think is even more fascinating. I love when we have science that we still use. Ebbinghaus is the German researcher who discovered this back in 1885. And believe me, researchers still look into this all the time to see if anything has changed. And I am sad to report what you probably are already figuring out, that it's even worse now. They think, the big they. We don't want everything to stick in our minds, right? We don't want to remember the bad altercation with the other driver, or even the earworm song or commercial we heard on the radio. But many researchers are currently saying that now that we consume so much information all day, every day, that our retention rate is even lower. So many studies recently have gotten specific enough to say that we lose half of the material that we don't want to retain in 2 hours, and 70% is gone in 24 hours. One study specifically of college students say that if they only experience information once by one method, they will lose 75% of that experience in the first 48 hours. I don't know about you and the students that you're teaching, but I've really noticed that students, because they have their laptop opens, simply no longer take notes, and I do hope that would change. I wanted to talk about the forgetting curve and include it in the book because the principles of how we can combat it are many of the issues that I discuss in the book, that is discussed in the book. So ways that we can combat this natural tendency is through conscious steps, conscious efforts, techniques like spaced repetition or spaced learning, which means reviewing materials at increasing intervals. That'll help reinforce the knowledge. But active recall, such as testing yourself or rereading, strengthens memory. Student-created quizzes, like I discussed in the Writing is Thinking chapter, work. But what do you think I'm going to say next? The number one way to retain information is to write down summaries of what you learned, right? So the writer's notebook and the reading response journal are also discussed in the Writing is Thinking chapter. But annotation, article review, and other exercises in the book will all help to fight the brain's natural tendency to forget. All of this points to the one message that we will not learn unless we are actively engaged with the material, whether that be via writing, discussion group, quizzes, or a combination thereof. If you're interested in these particular slides, since it shows the breakdown one too, these are at elearningindustry.com if you're interested. Okay, so the next up is Cornell notes. The Cornell notes, I have to just start off with my joke, but it's true. I have a nephew and 2 nieces that all went to Cornell. And they're still young, but they're really being successful. They're quite successful in their various fields. They're in 3 very different industries. So I texted them during the writing of the book and said, so did you use Cornell notes, and how engaged were you with them? Did you use them in every class? Did your professor suggest them? None of the 3 of them were ever taught Cornell notes. So I found that like a little bit of a bummer, because I think it's a pretty cool way to do it. The reason why they're called Cornell notes is because the brain research, or the study researcher, person who was also looking at how we learn at the time, was at Cornell, and so he named it Cornell. So I like this example because it's so simple. While the learner is listening to the TED Talk, attending the lecture, or reading the assignment, they take their notes here. After they're done, they write down some questions that they still have, right? After they're done with that part, they summarize the material, as I've discussed in the book. And you know too, when we paraphrase, we learn more than when we direct quote. But what I like about this too is we all learn differently, no matter what we're labeled. So some people might make bulleted lists. Somebody might want balloons and arrows and sketches. It doesn't matter what you put in this space, right? And the asking of the questions is sense making, right? And then the summary is complete assimilation of the knowledge. So this helps clarify meaning and reveals relationships between things, and simply strengthens your memory, because now you're going to remember whatever it is you've been asked to remember several different ways. So this aids in understanding, retention, and really I think a simple concept here too, just said that students don't really take notes so much anymore. This forces you to, right? You have to take the notes, and then take those other 2 steps, so you're kind of implanting it deeper and deeper into your brain. So the other one here I have is concept mapping. So concept mapping is another style of learning that I wrote about in the book. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's another thing that I thought that I would show you the visual on. My joke to myself is that my concept map would probably look like this, a little chaotic. Somebody else's might look like this, and that's fine too. What I like about this one is, like the Cornell notes, you're not doing this while the lecturer is lecturing. You are listening to the lecture and taking down notes in whatever manner you see fit, bulleted, just key words, whatever it is that works for each student, for each learner. And then you make this concept map, which is forcing you to see the connections between the different areas. So concept mapping is definitely something that you want to show your kids and show your students. And as I keep talking about this, allowing them some room, I would absolutely show them a sample of this one as well as this one, so they know that however they do it is okay, right? Depending on what you're teaching and the grade level of your students, maybe they're going to color in everything that is a scientific term. All that gets yellow, and words they need to look up get red. Whatever works for both you and them is the best way to do it, right? The students themselves should have more control than you. So I would have you show them a range, like I said, and make suggestions. Maybe they want to capitalize some terms. Maybe they want to use various punctuation. The more you do it, the better they'll get, just like everything else. So this is just simple science, and I thought that I would share these with you. Plenty of templates exist for any of these things. If you actually even want to print out to get your students started in the Cornell notes with concept mapping. Again, that might restrict them a little, but maybe getting started, they need a model. You're the best judge of that.